dark and difficult times lie ahead. Soon we must all face the choice between what is right and what is easy.
So many people have sent this to me, it's impossible to name them all. But as I've had so many copies of this sent to me to at least one of my inboxes, I couldn't get away with not discussing this on the channel. I know many of you will have already seen the footage, but as you know, my videos are not simply about sharing other people's videos. I try to at least leave people ending the video with a little extra knowledge where I can. I'm going to play the video in full before going through it for those of you who want to hear my take on the incident.
What for? It's Mark, are you harassing me? What for? I haven't done nothing wrong. Tell these, mate. What, go on. Give
No, you've done nothing wrong.
Your name, mate? Definition of harassment. Give your details. You want me to go? Give me the keys. Sit in your car, shut up. And if you want to fucking step to me and put in your chest out and stuff like that, then fine. I'll lock you up. We'll do that, shall we? I'll make something up. Public order. Score up to a police officer. Should I do that? Who are they going to believe, me or you? Who are they going to believe, me or you? You can film all you want.
I will do, mate, don't worry about it.
Show some respect.
Now, being fair to this incident, we don't really know what happened prior to the video being started, and I will continue to say this: if you are approached by the police for your own safety, do not start any interaction without first starting your camera. Without those initial minutes, you could be shooting yourself in the foot, as the police can pretty much make anything they like up as it's not recorded, which could negate the actions of the police who's in the actual footage you do record. Although luckily in this case there is very little that can be deemed as making these actions an appropriate response to any member of the public under any circumstances. Almost every action this copper takes here is a breach of Section 26 of the Criminal Justice and Courts Act 2015. The Act covers corrupt or other improper exercise of police powers and privileges. A police constable listed in subsection 3 commits an offence if he or she exercises the powers and privileges of a constable improperly and knows or ought to know that the exercise is improper. A police constable guilty of an offence under this section is liable on conviction on indictment to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 14 years, or a fine, or both. The police constables referred to in subsection 1 are a constable of police force in England and Wales, a special constable for a police force in England and Wales, a constable or special constable of the British Transport Police, a constable of the Civil Nuclear Constabulary, a constable of the Ministry of Defence Police, a National Crime Agency officer designated under Section 9 or 10 of the Crime and Courts Act 2013 as having the powers and privileges of a constable. For the purposes of this section, a police constable exercises the powers and privileges of a constable improperly if he or she exercises a power or privilege of a constable for the purpose of achieving a benefit for himself or herself, or a benefit or detriment for another person, and a reasonable person would not expect the power or privilege to be exercised for the purpose of achieving that benefit or detriment. For the purposes of this section, a police constable is to be treated as exercising the powers and privileges of a constable improperly in the cases described in subsection 6 and 7. Subsection 6. The first case is where the police constable fails to exercise a power or privilege of a constable. The purpose of the failure is to achieve a benefit or detriment described in subsection 4A, and C. A reasonable person would not expect a constable to fail to exercise the power or privilege for the purpose of achieving that benefit or detriment. 7. The second case is where a police constable threatens to exercise or not exercise a power or privilege of a constable. The threat is made for the purpose of achieving a benefit or detriment described in subsection 4A, and C. A reasonable person would not expect a constable to threaten to exercise or not exercise the power or privileges for the purpose of achieving that benefit or detriment. Subsection 8. An offence is committed under this section if the act or omission in question takes place in the UK or in UK waters. In this section, benefit and detriment mean any benefit or detriment, whether or not in money or other property, and whether temporary or permanent. United Kingdom waters means the seas and other waters within the seaward limits of the United Kingdom's territorial sea. References in this section to exercising or not exercising the powers and privileges of a constable include performing or not performing the duties of a constable. Nothing in this section affects what constitutes the offence of misconduct in public office at common law in England and Wales or Northern Ireland. Now, after hearing what that Act lays out, you would imagine that the only course of action to take against this constable would be criminal action, which paves the way for up to 14 years in prison, a fine, or both. And even though the force itself have made a statement on this incident that it's being looked into, I'd bet my bottom dollar that the force will try to justify the actions of this constable using the time before the video recording starts to make something up as to mitigate the constable's actions. Which, by the way, in a situation such as this are pretty much irrelevant, as there's nothing that would give a constable the right to threaten to make something up or in order to punish, as laid out in a Criminal Justice and Courts Act section 26, paragraph 4. For the purposes of the section, a police constable exercising the powers and privileges of a constable improperly if he or she exercises a power or privilege of a constable for the purpose of achieving a benefit for himself or herself, or a benefit or detriment for another person, and a reasonable person would not expect the power or privilege to be exercised for the purpose of achieving that benefit or detriment.
What for? It's Mark, are you harassing me? What for? I haven't done nothing wrong. Tell these, mate. What one?
No, you've done nothing wrong.
Give me the definition of harassment. Give your details. You want me to go? Give me the keys. Sit in your car, shut up. And if you want to fucking step to me and put things in your chest out and stuff like that, then fine, I'll lock you up. We'll do that, shall we? I'll make something up. Public order. Screw up to a police officer. Shall I do that? Who are they going to believe, me or you? Who are they going to believe, me or you? You can film all you want.
I will do, mate. Don't worry about it.
Show some respect.
Now, it's clearly evident that this constable is threatening the member of the public with powers that are non-existent in an attempt to both benefit himself and as a detriment to the other person. Clear violations, as you can all see for yourself. Threats, intimidation, lies, all of which are punishable under that Act. However, I don't think I've ever come across a report of a constable ever being criminally charged with breaching this legislation, and I'm certain this won't reach that level of punishment either. In fact, everything this constable has done here breaches just about every aspect of professional behaviour under the police's code of ethics, which wouldn't even touch misconduct but would take a huge leap right over it into gross misconduct, a sackable offence. College of Policing's Code of Ethics for Police Constables sets out the policing principles as: accountability, you are answerable for your decisions, actions and omissions. Fairness, you treat people fairly. Honesty, you are truthful and trustworthy. Integrity, you always do the right thing. Leadership, you lead by good example. Objectivity, you make choices on evidence and your best professional judgment. Openness, you are open and transparent in your actions and decisions. Respect, you treat everyone with respect. Selflessness, you act in the public interest. And that's before we even get into the standards of professional behaviour, which are honesty and integrity. I will act with honesty and integrity at all times and will not compromise or abuse my position. Authority, respect and courtesy. I will act with self-control and tolerance, treating members of the public and colleagues with respect and courtesy. I will use my powers and authority lawfully and proportionately and will respect the rights of all individuals. Equality and diversity. I will act with fairness and impartiality. I will not discriminate unlawfully or unfairly. Use of force. I will only use force as part of my role and responsibilities, and only to the extent that is necessary, proportionate and reasonable in all the circumstances. Orders and instructions. I will, as a police officer, give and carry out lawful orders only, and will abide by the police regulations. I will give reasonable instructions only, and will follow all reasonable instructions. Duties and responsibilities. I will be diligent in the exercise of my duties and responsibilities. Confidentiality. I will treat information with respect and access or disclose it only in the proper course of my duties. Fitness for work. I will ensure when on duty or at work that I am fit to carry out my responsibilities. Conduct. I will behave in a manner, whether on or off duty, which does not bring discredit on the police service or undermine public confidence in policing. Challenging and reporting improper behaviour. I will report, challenge or take action against the conduct of colleagues which has fallen below the standards of professional behaviour. Can you believe I just said all that without laughing? All of which I'm going to break down in detail in another video, by the way. Now, the College of Policing's Code of Ethics, not surprisingly, is written in a way that allows for excuses to be made for the behaviour, where, as we all know, excuses are not permitted for the public when they've done something wrong, even when done unintentionally, and lays out a set of considerations to be taken into account when determining whether a constable's behaviour has fallen short of the professional behaviour expected. These considerations include the nature and circumstances of the behaviour, the position, duties and responsibility of the person, the differences in restrictions on private life between police officers and police staff, other employees and volunteers, the rationale given by the person for their behaviour, the effects of the behaviour or its consequences on internal or external relationships, the reputation of the police service, the ability of the person to fulfil their duties, the effects of the behaviour on the organisation's trust and confidence in the individual, the public's trust and confidence in the police service. And yet, even now you know all this, I'm confident you can't still recall a single police constable who has been charged with Section 26 of the Criminal Justice and Courts Act, even though we've seen so many examples of the legislation being breached. In fact, it seems that the legislation is practically ignored by police and the Crown Prosecution Service, instead opting for individual alternative charges which offer lighter sentencing if found guilty. I would go so far as to say that the police and CPS will do their best, if they have no other choice, to find alternative criminal acts, such as assault or theft for example, rather than bring charges under this act, simply because in my view they will get a much more lenient sentence, in many cases a suspended sentence. The undeniable fact that most police will not be suspended from duty after such incidents is a worrying theme throughout police forces. Any other profession, and you would certainly be put on suspension for behaving in such a way to the member of the public. But the police simply close ranks and make excuses for each other while continuing to pay the constable whose behaviour is almost praised by taking them off frontline duties and giving a cushy desk job with pay while they're working to get them off the charges. I will say that this specific kind of behaviour is thankfully rare. Not that charges are made up, but that constable is so brazen about how far they're willing to go in order to teach someone they don't like a lesson. No doubt the police will come back with a well thought out statement to try and explain away these actions, and I'm actually going to take a guess here as to what that statement might say. These are very challenging times for all of our officers. New legislation has been brought in at unprecedented speed, and we are all trying our best to work with the public in order to protect the NHS and save lives. The fact our officers are still on the front line trying to protect lives is challenging, and the worry, stress and uncertainty is bound to creep through. The officer had a particularly stressful day, and the interaction with the member of the public who, before the recording started, was incredibly hostile, led to our officer having to take extreme measures to try and disperse the group. Although from the public's perspective this may seem like an unorthodox tactic due to the dangers our officers are facing during this pandemic, sometimes unorthodox measures are needed. We ask the public at this time to remember that other factors are at play here, and all you're seeing is a small part of the entire interaction. Please remember this, and also remember we have a system in place to deal with these incidents, and therefore remind you that trial by social media only serves to hinder our own investigation. Now, I'm not saying that's word for word what they're going to say, but I'm pretty certain that's going to be quite close to the BS that we're going to hear. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police and other officials.
Good night, all.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.